has been absolutely horrific. The performances on the pitch have simply not been good enough. I hope we had no confidence. We didn't create enough chances. We lacked hunger. We lacked ambition. We just lacked in so many areas. I've got a list of things that I think the system anyway. So there was basically a case of if we win and if we score a goal with it, the system works. If we concede a goal and start losing, the system doesn't work. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Young Fan Podcast. What is it about Saturdays? What is it about League One games for Oxford United at the moment? Because I can tell you for one thing that isn't good about a Saturday at the moment is the performances on the pitch for Oxford United Football Club. I mean, the performances that we have been putting in recent games in the league, and I mentioned the league more than I mentioned the game midweek because I said that we should definitely build off of that. Just league has been absolutely horrific. The performances on the pitch have simply not been good enough, and we've just got to look at ourselves now and go again. But we're not just going to leave it like that. We're going to be going through every single thing that I believe should be spoken about here in the podcast about our opening day defeat. We've already had that, unfortunately. Our second game of the season defeat against Sunderland 2-0 at home. The Black Cats certainly beat us thoroughly, well and truly today because we looked out of ideas. There's no excuses for the performance today. We had no hope. We had no confidence. We didn't create enough chances. We lacked hunger. We lacked ambition. And we certainly, there were some certain embarrassing performances from some certain individuals today. And I'm not going to just say certain individuals. I'd say most individuals today. I think generally on the whole, there were some poor performances from a lot of the Oxford United lads today. A lot of them should be going home today really looking at themselves. And that includes not just the players as well. I think everyone at the football club needs to look at themselves now. Obviously, that are able to affect the club going forward. Not the groundsmen. They didn't have to quite look at themselves too much. They didn't have much of an impact on the game. But certainly the players, the staff, and people like that in the football club certainly need to look at themselves. Because it's been a very, very bad start to the season. And I think there are some really interesting points we need to sort of look at early on when evaluating those games. I'm not going to speak about Lincoln too much. I'm going to mostly speak about Sunderland. Obviously, this is a Sunderland preview. I respect also that if there's some Sunderland fans listening to this as well, you're not going to want to be listening to me talking about Lincoln. If you wanted to hear me speak about Lincoln, in that performance, specifically Oxford United fans, I'm guessing, you can go and watch my Oxford United review and match reaction of that game this time last week. Probably, I think it's about 2 episodes ago, the podcast, 2 or 3 episodes ago on the podcast. I really recommend listening to that if you want me to speak about Lincoln. I think naturally we're going to sort of have to speak about the games Sunderland and Lincoln in this podcast because ultimately there were some certain dodgy performances for Oxford United. So let's crack on with it then. Let's speak about the performance. To be honest with you, I think first of all, and I'll say this first and foremost, there are no excuses for the performances that Oxford United are putting in at the moment. We could blame so many things. We could blame the lack of fans. Why would we blame the lack of fans? Sunderland didn't have any fans either. Last week, Lincoln didn't have any fans either. We can blame the lack of fans. I think there is a small part of it that is without fans that is affecting Oxford United. I generally do think that is the case. But I also think that we have to be honest with ourselves and we have to look at the performances. If the performances were sort of like mid-range and if we feel like the fans could take us to this level, then I think we're onto something there. The problem is that the performances are down here that you can't even see on the camera, and I spoke about this in the preview as well. The performances are down here, and I wanted them to go up here because that's where we needed to beat Sunderland today. They're a good side, and they showed again today they're a very, very good side. We were down here, and at times we creeped up, and then we fell short. And on average, we were down here. I'm not going to sit here and say we were abysmal throughout the game, but we were too many times just simply not good enough. And when you do that in League One, which is a very competitive league, and if you want to get promoted, and if you want to challenge in for serious things in this division, you're going to have to be at a high level and a reasonably high level throughout the season. And these 2 games so far have showed that we certainly aren't giving that. So there is a big problem there. There is a real big problem there. And I think Carl Robinson and a lot of people are going to have to sort of really look at it. And I think we can sit here and say Carl Robinson this, Carl Robinson that, but ultimately the players have got to look at themselves, because the players have obviously put themselves into a situation now where these are the group of players that are probably going to be going into this season. We might have a few additions here and there, but we're not going to bring in a worldie of a left back. We don't really need to bring in a worldie of a left back. But if people think that we're going to bring in a left back that's going to change Oxford United, and we're going to go from having, we're going to go from having, really poor performances and nothing going forward, and really sort of poor performances on the football pitch, and we think that this left back that we could possibly get in that is going to be brought in for cover, and I stress cover. Well, we weren't going to even delve into the market for a left back really until Josh Ruffels got an injury. I mean, I mentioned it before, but I don't think Carl Robinson was. Carl Robinson's priority certainly wasn't there, and that he isn't going to change. He isn't going to change the way we play. Ultimately, the change in form and the change in the way we play football has got to come from the players in the squad now. Now, on the other side of that, on the flip side of that, we are looking to bring in probably an attacking forward that the Carl Robinson is generally looking. The Carl Robinson wants to bring in. He wants to bring in an under-21 lad. We know that because that doesn't affect squad registration. It's probably going to be a loanee from a Championship club or a Premier League club, similar probably to like Nathan Holland or Marcus Brown. It probably won't be either of them two, because I understand Nathan Holland is doing well for the under-23s / under-21s sort of reserves at West Ham United. I also understand that Marcus Brown's been on the bench and has actually been sort of part of the first team with Middlesbrough this season. So I can't see those two coming back to us. And the way that Marcus Brown left Oxford United, I don't think he was in a position where he wanted to come back. I thought he did very, very well, and I think all Oxford United fans loved Marcus Brown, but I don't think he wants to come back. I think when you it's very unusual to see a player be loaned back again. Normally you loan him once, and if you could maybe permanently buy him, but we've loaned him twice. I can't see him be loaned in 3 times, and especially when he has sort of been involved in the first team. I think the reason why Marcus Brown initially was actually loaned out to us the second time was because he needed to get match experience, and he wasn't getting that at Middlesbrough. Now it's the start of a new season. So he's got that full opportunity to grab it at Middlesbrough, and start games and play regularly there. Nathan Holland, does Nathan Holland really want to come back to Oxford United? You know what I mean? He just won Young Hammer of the Year at West Ham, and so it's difficult, isn't it? It's very, very difficult. I think it's going to be someone like that. I think that is what we need, but I think we need that. I think we need a left back, and I think we're being really, really choosy. I think we're going to have to need a centre back as well, because we've clearly, a clear lack of depth, lack of depth, in the centre back and defensive area. So 3 players would be nice to bring in, but I think we've also got to be realistic as well. This football club hasn't got an endless amount of money. I think specifically at this time, I think we've got a very, very limited amount of money at this football club. And I think we've actually got to be lucky to really, all of us have got to be lucky that this football club is still going strong. We've actually had to strengthen the tour this season, because ultimately we could have just sold Rob Dickie, and that could have been the money that is going to keep us as afloat as a football club. And I think we all have to respect as well, there probably will be football clubs this season, and hopefully it's not Oxford United, and fingers crossed actually it's hopefully not any football club in the EFL, and it really at all. But it probably will be a case that some teams won't be able to last much longer without fans and without that match revenue coming into the football clubs. Which is, of course, a huge thing and a real disappointment. I understand this is a match reaction, and a lot of people will just want to listen to me talk about that. But I think this is a podcast where we're going to literally speak about everything football, and I think this is a big thing. And I do tend to go off track a lot, and that's not just in podcasting. That's just generally. When I start talking about one thing, I will drift off. But I think the moral of the story here is we understand, and this isn't a call to the club in which we have to sign left back as a winger and attacker / and a centre half, because honestly I think we'd actually be happy with just one of those. I think in terms of priority list, I think probably a left back's priority, because clearly a full back is a situation where it's not ideal. I will not be surprised if we hear later today or tomorrow that Sean Clare, or even during midweek, that Sean Clare has picked up a knock, and he was doubtful for the game anyway today, but because of our severe issue in fullback and now completely defensively, um, he had to play, and he picked up a knock and his sort of performance went really from downhill from there. To be honest, I thought he looked okay, but it went really quite sour after that knock. So that's disappointing. I think in terms of priority, it's going to have to be a left back. I then think an attacking threat is something we're going to need because I know we changed formation today. Carl Robinson loves the 4-3-3. That's what we were so successful with last season. Player availability has been a factor of changing. I also think a factor of changing is a lot of teams have sussed us out. We like to play an attractive brand of possession football, and a lot of teams have now really worked out that they don't really want us. They know exactly really how to suss us out. The main way, I think, to be honest, is, and if I was looking at it from an opposition point of view, if you sit deep, we take so long to break teams down, and that's really what happens. Times before where teams have sort of just come at us and haven't let us haven't let us put a foot on the game. They're the ones that have actually been beaten by us. If you don't let us have our foot on the game, you will beat us. Because ultimately, the only way that the real threat we offer is when we have the ball and when we penetrate defences. At the moment, we're not doing either. At the moment, we're now, it was at first it was against Lincoln. We created a few chances, but not many. We held the ball, didn't penetrate the opposition, and didn't look threatened, didn't create enough chances, didn't do anything with the ball, and took too long. Now it's a case of we're not creating any chances. We don't look like we want to create any. Well, we want to create chances. Of course we do. We want to win a game of football, but we don't look like we look like we were going in the right direction. I think against Watford, but honestly, we just lacked in so many areas. I've got a list of things that I think we lacked: hunger, ambition, elements of leadership. I think confidence is a huge one. We lacked confidence in such a way that honestly, I generally think now we have in the back of our minds this Wickham feeling of a lot of the players feel like, I think a lot of the players have still lost confidence from that Wickham defeat at the end of last season. I think there is a lot of things in the back of their minds which is really worrying, and it's a real shame, really, because this was a real big opportunity at the start of the season to kick off and kickstart and really sort of finish off our unfinished business that we just didn't manage to get round to last season. We fell so short at. But actually, it's that case of we look still phased by last season. We look still severely worried by teams physically bullying us and us not being able to create chances, which was a real problem against Wickham. We didn't create enough chances. We didn't play football. And a lot of teams, like Wickham, sussed us out that if you go physical against us and you try and stop us from play football, you will beat us. Or if you don't beat us, you'll certainly cause us problems. And we won't be very threatening. And that's exactly what we did today. A lot of teams have done that. Wickham did that, Lincoln did that, and Sunderland to an extent did that as well. I think Sunderland were a team that I think we had more of a chance of beating Sunderland than Lincoln, to be honest. And I think that isn't because Sunderland were a poor side. I think that's actually because Sunderland tried to play football throughout the game, and that's again no disrespect to Lincoln, because Lincoln beat us in a way in which we were just very, very poor, and they beat us fair and square. But I also think that Sunderland came at us wanted to play football. They came at us looking threatening. Most times they came forward. And everything that was sort of a 50-50 us versus Sunderland won. And that's not by... And we'll speak about the goal in a minute. I think there was a severe element of luck in the goal. In the first goal. But I also think the second goal was just us being very poor and them being very, very good. Which, to be honest with you, it is just completely unacceptable, because the first goal, like I just said there, the first goal was a case of, if you hadn't seen it, it was basically the ball came in, we failed to clear it, which is a problem number one, clearing the ball. I mean, that's what you teach at probably when you literally start playing football, like safety first, clear the ball. We didn't do that. And then we didn't get any luck from there, really. We just literally got zero luck. It then sort of fell to a player. They sort of like hit it. It sort of deflected off the ground, or deflected off one of our players. Came back to a Sunderland player perfectly. They sort of sliced it. It then went to someone's, and it sliced it. It was like a pass, but they sliced it completely. Then it came off another Sunderland player's knee, bearing in mind that it hadn't touched the floor at this point. It literally just sort of went bang, touched the floor, player, straight to this person's knee completely. It's just perfect, really. And then it was the knee pass to sort of another Sunderland player, just coincidentally, and they slotted it in. And it sounds like there I'm being really sort of, what's the word? I sound like I'm sort of making excuses for Oxford United when actually I sort of am. It was a very unlucky goal to concede. But ultimately, at least Sunderland got themselves in the area where they were going to score. And the second goal was just us being defensively awful and then making look something that was actually quite difficult look extremely easy. And that's not because I'm not going to take anything away from the player. I don't know who scored. I think it was Gooch, wasn't it, from Sunderland? A really really good player. But the thing is, it's a case of they just literally ran at our defence. They ran at our defence. And in this case, when we conceded, Gooch just ran at our defence, and our players, this was in slow motion. They just sort of looked at each other and just thought, what are we going to do here? And by the time we sort of made a decision on what we were going to do, he just sprinted past them and slotted it into the bottom right. It's embarrassing stuff. I mean, it's just, those are the things. And then, and we're just, meanwhile here at Oxford United, we're sort of hoofing balls left and right and centre. We got a right back who, is picking up a knock, and I'll go through the player ratings in a minute. I'm going to bring my notes back up now. And we will do the player ratings, but I don't, the player ratings is normally, I sort of really intended to make the player ratings, and the reason why I sort of added this to didn't add it, but I mean, this is the reason why I put this into the podcast, and the reason why player ratings was always going to be part of this episode of the podcast, and the sort of match reaction, match review episodes of the podcast here on the Young Fan Podcast. And the reason why they were there was because I anticipated this season to be a case of, this is a big season for Oxford. A huge one. Where I generally thought, and it's only 2 games in, but I am worrying now. I am in that 2-game situation where we're already playing catch-up, we're bottom of the league after 2 games, and the performances and the goals don't look like they're coming from anywhere. I do not know who is going to score our first goal, which is worrying. I thought Taylor was going to score our first goal today, but since that chance, he really didn't do much. I don't know where the goal. I really don't know where the goals are coming from. I don't think it's a blame on our strikers. I don't think we can really blame the forwards too much, because, as in the strikers, because the delivery from the midfield has been nothing short of abysmal. They haven't. I think if we looked at a heat map of Matty Taylor in the last 2 games against Lincoln and Sunderland, I think we probably would see a clear pattern, and that clear pattern showing that he's not getting the ball in the right areas where last season he was getting in those areas, and scoring the goals, which ultimately put us in a position where we were last season. But this season, it's a case of we look at each other in just pure confusion of what's going to happen next, and that is a question. Where do we go from here? And we will sort of speak about that after the player ratings. But I think in terms of if we're going we lacked so many things, and if we go over the list, I think we've covered the no ideas. I think we generally look like we don't know what we're going to do. I think we're sort of desperate for this first goal so much now that we're willing to do anything. If that means literally going to Route 1 target man, stereotypical non-league stuff, then is that really what we're going to do? We haven't done that in the time that Carl Robinson has been here. I doubt Carl Robinson has gone into the changing rooms beforehand and gone, right lads, scrap everything we've done so far. I've worked so hard, Carl Robinson, to deal with so much stick from a lot of fans. Sort of when I came in and a little while after and stuff, and there was a real sort of I didn't know whether or not I was really felt at home here. I've now signed a 4-year contract at this club, and I'm looking at each other, and we've sort of created this amazing brand of football that Oxford United are so well known for doing now, and that has worked so well for us. You know what, lads? Scrap that. We're going to go with a target man, and we're going to hoof it as hard as we can at the field, as far as we can. and hope it falls to someone up front. You know, Ossai's a really tall lad, so let's just hoof it up to him, hope he holds up the ball, and see what happens. When that is not what we've done for the last years we've been here, and I understand we have to adapt, and I understand we have to change because teams do suss us out, but I also think as well we have never played like this. So I don't know why we've suddenly started to do this, and I know why. It's because we're desperate, but I don't know why we're resorting to this. It's frustrating, so frustrating, because like I said, we've never ever done this. We've never ever sort of gone what we're gonna do, and there were times last season when we were in this situation, but we never resorted to sort of pure desperation. If Plan A didn't work last season, which Plan A has always been the same with Carl Robinson and Oxford United here, was the ultimate Plan A was we're gonna hold the ball in possession, we're gonna attractive football, keep it on the deck, and we're gonna ping it out and use the attacking fullbacks. I understand we haven't really got those attacking fullbacks at the moment, but ultimately Sean Clare was brought in to be an attacking fullback. I understand that Sam Long's in a situation where he's having to play left back in a weaker position, with his weaker foot, but it is a weaker position for him. So, and you don't get that Josh Ruffles attacking threat that you do with Sam Long, but, and that's no disrespect to Sam Long. I thought he had a decent game today. I think he was one of the only players that looked very good, not very good, looked okay. Or good, I would say good. But other than that, I thought that's the way we want to play, and we've now just resorted to hoofball, which is disappointing because ultimately we've created this whole thing, and we've created this way of philosophy of football. Also, to say Carl Robinson has, and the players have been brought in to play like that. Kelly's come back, and every time there was an interview of a new signing at the start of the season, they would all go, and I spoke to the gaffer, and I really like the way Oxford United are playing, I really like what the brand of football they play, really excited by the future of this football club. They're probably looking at each other now going, what are we going to do now? I've come here to play this brand of football. I've come here to play Carl Robinson's way of football, and I'm now looking at these sort of centre-half midfielders who've got zero idea of what we're going to do because we've lacked ideas. Plan A hasn't worked. We've missed Plan B and C and gone straight to Plan Z, which is completely hoof the ball up. Hoofing the ball at Oxford United should never be even a plan anyway, and apparently it's our fourth plan. So there you go. Hopefully that changes as quickly as possible because it's actually more frustrating. I'd actually rather we try and play the way that... I understand we have to change the game. The game's not playing well. We don't just force something that clearly isn't working. But I also think try something else that might work. If Plan A doesn't work, we don't just go and start hoofing the ball up to Ossai and hope that he's going to sort of magically touch the ball down with a magic wand and it's then going to go into the back of the net when he sings abracadabra, because that isn't going to happen. You've got to do something with the ball and you've got to get it to him in the right places and sort of work with the player. But that's not happening at Oxford United at the moment, and that hasn't happened in the first two games. And I'm gonna be honest. A part of me was a little concerned after the AFC Wimbledon game, because after that AFC Wimbledon game, and before that actually when I did my predictions, I was quite confident that AFC Wimbledon were going to sort of not play very well, and that we were going to sort of walk all over them and beat them 3-0. I think my prediction was actually 3-0, or I think it might have been 2-0, and it would finish 1-1 because of some sloppy goal conceded, and sort of lack of chances created in that game. And there's a clear pattern. Every time we try and play and I say this in speech marks, or inverted commas, or whatever you want to call it, and I'll say it now, here we go. I've completely forgotten it. This is a bit awkward. What was I going to say? There we go. Our strongest 11. We've struggled to create chances. On Tuesday night against Watford, we played what I would probably say is our second team. I think that's unfair, but I think I don't want to say weakened either, but because it wasn't, to be honest. But because to be honest, this team played better than the team again on Tuesday night played better than the team that played today by probably 20 miles, probably even more. At least then we looked like we wanted to do something with the ball. And tonight we literally this afternoon going into this evening, we let Sunderland walk all over us. We let Sunderland take us, and actually, to be honest with you, it's just assassinate us. They sort of walked on the pitch and got all of our players and went, see you later, Oxford. We're just going to come here and play our game, and you're just going to play catch-up throughout the game, which ironically is what we're now doing in the season. So, that's the way it is, but also a disappointing way. I don't really want to sit here and say, well, that's what it is what it is, whatever, because ultimately, we can change this, and it's only 2 games in. If we play like the way we have been playing, we are going to be stuck in a situation where we're in deep trouble. and where we're going to get ourselves into a league position and just in a position generally where we don't want to be in. Which is really, really disappointing because I was really, really excited for the season. I still am. I'm not losing hope, and I'm not losing all of that after 2 games. It's 2 games at the end of the day. But what is worrying me really is the way that we're playing. To be honest, because if we were playing with confidence but losing games, if we were playing with areas of excitement, but we struggled to score, we struggled to penetrate the opposition. But not even that, because I think if you're playing well and you play with confidence, you naturally penetrate the opposition, and you naturally work against the opposition and try and beat them in any way possible. But with us, we're not doing either of that. With us, it's a simple case of we're literally not really creating enough chances or any chances. I was actually going to look how many shots we had today, and I was going to actually, but I don't think I want to, but I am going to now anyway, live as we are recording this episode of the podcast. How many shots did we have? Okay, I don't know where. Attack. Okay, here we go. We had 8 shots to their 18, which is great. They had 10 more shots than us today. 10 more. And you could say, I'm talking about the stats. And if we win, if we had won this game 2-0, I probably wouldn't even mention the stats. I would have said, it doesn't matter how much the stats. It's matters about what matters on the football pitch, and it matters about the score, which it obviously does. But I also think that when you do lose, you do look at the stats, and ultimately we were dominated throughout the game. Shots on target, we had 8 shots, one of them on target. They only had 5 shots on target. Out of their 18 shots, but still they had 10 more shots than us. We had, I don't really know what this is actually making me more depressed. 28% shot accuracy to them. We had 13%. So we had less shots and a lesser shot accuracy, and I think that's all I'm going to look at, to be honest, because that just really sums up the game. We created very little chances. I'm going to quickly look back, and I'm going to look how many. Is there a chances created? Statistic here. Crossing accuracy, that isn't really what we want. Chances created just isn't an option. I can tell you really simply how many chances we created. Very little. We looked out of ideas when we were trying to create chances, and ultimately that's the reason why. But anyway, move on. I'm repeating myself. Lack of ideas, no excuses other than maybe there's no fans, but ultimately that's a lot of teams now. Most teams. And obviously every team we're playing up against. So there you go. No hope, to be honest with you. I know that's quite a deep and quite a straight out sort of quite blunt way of putting it, but we do look like we've got no hope. We have got hope, and I'm always very, very optimistic in terms of that we really much can turn the season around, and we could go on and win the league. But the way we're playing right now, that's the last thing. This is relegation form, and ultimately the performances look like a relegation side. I look like a team that really don't look very good. We're not going to get relegated, and I really do hope we are going to look like a promotion side soon. But at the moment, it's not looking great. No hope, no confidence, not enough chances, a lack of hunger, a lack of ambition, and a lack of leadership, which is really frustrating, to be honest, because all of those things we really did offer last season, and we didn't this season. I'm going to quickly mention one last thing and just mention the leadership, because I think we've got a captain in Cameron Brannigan who I was really excited and deserved to be captain. The problem we've got is, last season, for a lot of the season, we had Jamie Mackie, and as much as I said so many times, I don't really want to see Jamie Mackie start because he's just so frustrating. The amount of times he just frustrates me every time. Excuse me, and probably frustrates every fan, to be honest, is really because but what he did offer was that leadership, and what he did offer was that sort of edge of frustration on a football pitch when you're talking about football, but when you're talking about leadership and when you're talking about someone that can actually change the game mentally for you, Jamie Mackie offered that. That's the same with John Mousinho, and I think to an extent it's the same with Josh Ruffles, because he knows his football club very well. He's very experienced at Oxford United, and you could say that about Sam Long, but Sam Long doesn't come across to me as a very vocal player on the pitch, whereas I think Josh Ruffles is probably more vocal than Sam Long. But I think more John Mousinho. I think definitely more Jamie Mackie, as much as he frustrated me. And I don't know if I can. I'm going to say it. losing Derek Fazackley as well as part of the coaching staff, I think has had a small change. I think behind closed doors, and I don't, and that isn't me saying anything about is it Craig Short? Um, it's definitely Short. Obviously, he's got the two brothers working there as our new assistant manager. Um, but it's not no disrespect to him. But I think what Fazackley offered us was that experienced Oxford United Football Club that I don't think we've really got in the dugout anymore. Obviously we've got is it? I think it's Brown, isn't it? Who's the goalkeeping coach. And I think and that's really it. But it's a very I don't know whether I'm onto anything here, but I think leaving Derek Fazackley and losing him was frustrating, and definitely has affected something. Because I really like Derek Fazackley, and he offers so much experience and loved the football club and knew the football club so well. He was and still is really a part of the furniture at Oxford. And I know he had to come to a point where he had to step down and he had to sort of change his role and sort of step away from that. But I also think it has affected a few things because obviously Sam Long's been here since he was the thing and since he was obviously so young. And it's the same with Josh Ruffles and Cameron Brannigan here as well. And most players that have basically just been here longer than Carl Robinson know Derek Fazackley so well and sort of been on the journey with him. And now he's gone. It's a very new and very different coaching staff. Which is difficult. But I think that in terms of if we were going to look at it of percentages of reasons why this is, I think it'd probably be. I think that would probably be about 10%, not even that, probably about 8%, 7% out of 100. And I think honestly the player performances today was probably in terms of percentage about 70% of it. But I think little things like that. I think little things like, and I think fans is a big thing actually. I think fans is much bigger. I think fans is probably about 20-30% of the reason why it's not going very well. I think the change in backroom staff, in particular Derek Fazackley, I think is probably about 8%, 6%. I think last season's disappointment is probably about 30%. I'm not even doing that maths in my head. I haven't even thought about this. It's not going to add up to 100. 20% maybe. So there are a lot of percentages, and there's so many reasons and percentages why that is the case. But there are reasons, I think, more than just the fact that we haven't played very well, and there are more reasons to it why we're not playing very well at all, and why we're in a position where that we are now with 2 games down in the league in this season. With 0 points to the table and we're sat at the bottom. But I understand I've been talking for quite a long time on this episode of the podcast. We haven't got onto the player ratings yet, so I think we're going to crack on with the player ratings. I appreciate if you're still listening now as well, by the way, because I understand a lot of people want to just listen to reviews where we talk about it for 10 minutes and move on. But ultimately, this is probably going to be the longest ever episode of the podcast we've ever done, which means it could be out later because it means I've got to edit it. And it's a longer episode to edit, and also it takes longer to upload onto YouTube. But I apologise for that. But there are a lot of things that we need to sort out for this football club, and I think it's disappointing. It really is. But anyway, without sounding too down and make me start crying, I'm joking. I'm not going to cry. Any more notes? Started the game okay. Got our foot on the ball, but it slipped away due to our performances all around. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. We started the game okay. But we just sort of let it was 0-0 at half time, and from there we conceded a really quick goal after half time, and it all went wrong from there. The new system, of course, we went with the diamond thing, which I just think we've got to abandon. I think we can sit here and say, give it a chance, just abandon him. It clearly doesn't. It clearly hasn't. It took about 60 minutes. We basically conceded the goal and went, we went gung ho, but then I think after 60 minutes we changed the system anyway, so there was no point. It was basically a case of if we win and if we score a goal with it, the system works. If we concede a goal and start losing, the system doesn't work and we're going to change it anyway. So, which way do you look at it? If we won the game 1-0, we could say this is the best system that's ever invented and it's a revolution at Oxford. But because we've lost 2-0 today, I think the system hasn't worked. I'm willing to give it time. I'm not going to criticise you anything. I'm not going to criticise really the way we set out. I think we did need to change it, but I don't think this is the right way. I don't have any ideas. I'm not a professional manager. I don't have any. I'm not a qualified manager. But we did need to change it. But it could be this. But it's not giving me great hope after that performance. Anyway, let's get on the player ratings. It's not going to be a long one. You know, I sometimes quite spend a lot of time on the player ratings. It's not going to be very long. Eastwood today's got himself a 6. He looked decent when collecting the ball into the box, but couldn't do anything couldn't do anything about the goals. He looked okay, Eastwood, but he couldn't really do anything. He didn't really do anything other than concede that he couldn't do anything about. But I think when some balls went in the box, he looked quite good and was quite strong and did okay. So he's got a 6 today. Sean Clare's got a 3, quite harsh, I know, but he was very, very poor. I mean, okay in the first half, I thought, and then when he picked up that knock, he just looked really, really bad. I think that is a real area that isn't looking great at the moment for us. And, you know, it's disappointing, really. By Sean Clare's standards, I know he can do much better. I'm sure he will. But today he's got himself a 3. Elliot Moore's got himself a 5. I thought he was good in the air. A bit of a worrying moment in the first literally 10 seconds. Well, not that, probably about a minute. When he sort of was playing the ball around with his feet. Didn't do anything with it. And I think that's another thing as well, releasing the ball. We didn't do that enough today at all. I will apologise for the brightness of the camera and everything going darker. That's because I've been sat here for a long time and you've hopefully been listening for a while. But no, I think the performance was abysmal. I thought Sean Clare's individual performance was poor. Atkinson today, sorry, I was talking about more there. I think we didn't release the ball enough. I think that's the main reason why we were abysmal. Atkinson's got himself a 7. He's actually man of the match. Not just because he's got the highest rating. I mean, it is down to that largely, but also because I think he generally was the best player today. He was the man of the match. If this was in the actual game, I don't think I would have given. If this was, I was actually picking the man of the match for the game, it definitely wouldn't have been a Manchester United player. But it is going to be a Manchester United player. Manchester United. What am I on about? It was because I'm watching the Manchester United Crystal Palace game. Apologies for that. It probably wouldn't be an Oxford game. It probably wouldn't have been an Oxford player at all. I think it definitely would have been a Sunderland one. But I thought he was generally very good. And I think what's really embarrassing for us is the fact that Rob Atkinson was probably the best player going forward. I can't believe I just said that, but I think he actually offered the most threat going forward. He caused the most problems going forward. Our best chance of the game came from a near assist by Rob Atkinson, which I think is just awful. I think is just absolutely embarrassing. And, it's just so annoying. It's just so frustrating. But, credit to Rob Atkinson, but, if you're an attacker at Oxford United and a midfielder at Oxford, then there's some serious work to do. Because when you've got your centre-half running out of defence and causing issues for their defence, and you're meant to be the striker and attacking midfielder, or just players that are meant to help out and going forward, which is most of the players here, other than really defence, but even the fullback should have been. And your centre-back's doing more than most of you. So, that's annoying, but, it's a good performance from Atkinson. I thought it was very good defensively as well. Sam Long's got himself a 6. He looked decent defensively, I thought. Some okay ball into the box, his weaker foot, but I think I've also got to bear in mind as well, this is a player that's playing in a weaker position. He's playing on the opposite side. I've never seen Sam Long play left back before, other than when he sort of came on midweek against Watford. Other than that, I haven't really seen him play there. I've seen him play a little bit in pre-season, maybe a little bit against Lincoln. I can't really remember. But I think today I thought he looked okay. I thought he was defensively very, very solid. We know he doesn't offer us much going forward, but I think he's a defensive fullback that gives us what we need in defence at the moment, and that's stability. And Sam Long offers that. So I was quite impressed with Sam Long's performance today. I got himself a 6. Kelly was a 5. Didn't offer anything. Didn't out-penetrate the Sunderland defence. Didn't really look like he was going to help us out or anything like that. Looked really bad. Just looked really bad when he was trying to come forward. To be honest with you, he got booked as well. He got beaten a few times by quite a few of the players, a few Sunderland players as well, when they were sort of coming at him defensively. It looked very shaky. So I wasn't really impressed with Kelly, to be honest, today, which is disappointing because I like Kelly. I also think we really miss Gorin as well, which is a lot of things. We don't really speak about that, but I think it really is a problem. And I think Kelly, he's struggling at the moment. Brannigan's got himself a 6. Didn't affect the game as much as we know he can. He looked okay and tried hard in midfield and looked quite decent in midfield, but utterly didn't really do much at all. I love Cameron Brannigan so much as a footballer. I never met him personally, so I wouldn't know personally. But I just sort of generally really, really enjoy watching Cameron Brannigan play normally. And in recent games, he just hasn't been himself. But I think today's been okay. And Cameron Brannigan will always offer you sort of a 7 or 8 out of 10. And a 6 for him is a bad performance. As much as for quite a few times, it's a 6 is average. But actually, today it was average, which is not what you normally get, which is disappointing. Sykes has got a 5, and I no word of a lie. I would show you. but I can't. But no word of a lie, literally put in Sykes' notes he got himself a 5, and he didn't do anything. Literally didn't do anything. He's only got himself a 5 because I thought you can't really judge someone down for not doing anything wrong. 5 is like 6 is like your average, and 5 is like didn't really do anything right or wrong. So I don't really need to comment too much on Sykes. Didn't really offer the game anything. Henry got himself a 6, looked good at times going forward, but didn't do enough. I don't need to expand on that. Taylor 6, chased down the ball okay, had a good chance in the first half with that header. Did well to actually get to that header, but not enough clearly because we didn't score from it. But looked okay. I thought he chased down our dead, woeful ball as well. When we sort of just thought we're just gonna hoof it up there, and one of our attackers will sort of maybe get himself on there, break a back, break a bone, stretch your limbs to try and get one of our absolutely horrific balls, which is always good. And Taylor did that today. Offside, didn't do anything. Hardly touched the ball. Can't really think of him actually doing anything, to be honest with you. And that's literally what I wrote down. Don't really remember Offside doing anything in that game. I thought he pressed okay. I thought he put pressure on, okay. But he didn't really offer us what we want going forward, which is annoying. And that's why he's got himself a 5. Where do we go from here? Well, we've got Accrington Stanley away next week, so that's going to be okay. We hate going to Accrington, of course, and I'm going to literally check now because of my great preparation. I am going to check the Accrington score from today. I have no idea who they were playing. The date is the 19th, so I'm not sure why it hasn't come up. And Accrington lost the game today away to Burton. So, we've got Accrington who have lost again. I don't think even they lost the first game of the season, did they? I'll find out now. Next week, so that's going to be interesting. I will tell you what happened. They lost to Burton, but they beat Peterborough in the first game of the season. They also beat Leeds until we won 7-0 in the EFL Trophy. So they can score some goals apparently. I'm a bit worried about Accrington, to be honest. I think Accrington could be quite a challenge, which is annoying because at the moment the least of what we want is a team that there's a team that's on form, because we're the complete opposite. But that's really what is next for us in terms of what next for the podcast. It probably will be the preview for that, unless anything big happens in midweek. It could be that we sign a player. Hopefully we blooming well do, because we desperately need that. Other than that, I can't really see there's anything drastically change at Oxford in midweek. So it will probably be the preview next. If you could leave a like on this episode of the podcast, that'd be much appreciated. Just watch this episode of the podcast is great. Also, can we hit 80 subscribers? And I know I said this midway through, so if you're watching this now, please subscribe. Or maybe you even are already subscribed if you're watching this way through. That's loyalty to the podcast. If we can hit 80 subscribers by the end of this episode, and by the time we get a new episode, probably the preview for Accrington, that would be great. If not, we don't, but it'd be cool if we could. We definitely hit the 75 subscriber mark. I think we are literally on 75 subscribers. I said, can we get that by the time we get this episode out? And we did that, which is great. If you can subscribe as well. I've also changed the name of us on Twitter as well. Obviously, it was very confusing times last time because, I was sort of trying to work out why, what the name of our Twitter was on the podcast. And I can officially announce I've changed it. So we are now the @YoungFanPodcast on Twitter, if you want to follow that. If you also want to follow the Instagram page, that is @TheYoungFanPodcast. There's a difference. On Twitter, it's just Young Fan Podcast. On Instagram, it's The Young Fan Podcast. On YouTube, obviously, it is The Young Fan Podcast. No reason why other than we didn't have enough letters left for the name on Twitter. So that's that. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Sorry if there was a quick pause there. That's because the camera died there. But thank you very much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Sorry, it's a bit of a negative one, and sorry that every Saturday episode at the moment is quite a negative one because we keep losing in the league. But thank you very much for listening to it, and really much appreciate it. Hopefully, you have a good rest of your weekend. And I will see you next time. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.